Hello there and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of the My English Matters podcast. I'm Amna, and today's episode is dedicated to all you wonderful extroverts out there. So, do you find yourself energized by social interactions? Do you love being at the heart of lively gatherings and engaging in conversations? If this sounds like you, you're likely an extrovert, and that is an amazing trait. Your outgoing nature is a huge asset, but even extroverts can face challenges when it comes to speaking English confidently. So, today we'll dive into how you can harness your extroverted strengths to master English and speak with greater confidence. In my previous episode 132, I spoke about the unique challenges introverts face with learning English. So while many of our students identify as introverts, I'd say about 30% of our students are extroverts. So if you're an extrovert, you're in for a treat. It's important to address the specific needs of extroverts so you can leverage your natural strengths and overcome any obstacles in your language learning journey. So if you're not an extrovert, make sure you listen to my episode from last week because I talked about introverts. And if you've already listened to that one, that's great. Now you can learn a bit more about your extroverted friends by listening to this episode and implementing some of the tips that I'll share today. Now, before we dive in, let's quickly recap what introversion and extroversion actually mean. In the early 20th century, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung introduced these concepts to explain how people focus their energy and attention. So, introverts recharge by spending time alone and often prefer small group activities or solitude. Extroverts, on the other hand, gain energy from social interactions and enjoy being around people in lively settings. Modern psychology suggests that these traits exist on a spectrum, leading to the idea of ambiverts, people who exhibit both introverted and extroverted characteristics. Also, both biological and environmental factors, such as our genes and upbringing, play a role in shaping whether we lean more towards introversion or extroversion. So I discussed this in a little bit more detail in last week's episode 132. But it is important to understand this foundation as we focus on extroverts today. So, are you an extrovert? For me, I am an ambivert. So, I resonate with both introverted and extroverted traits. Growing up in a big family, being around people feels like home to me. Even now, working from home, I'm constantly surrounded by my kids and the buzz of daily life. And so I quite like it that way. So while I cherish and need my time alone, too much solitude can leave me feeling a bit lost. So I find I need a balance and crave the stimulation that comes from being with others. So, what are the common challenges you may face as an extrovert when speaking English as a second language? Let's discuss them here and talk about ways you can overcome them. Firstly, overconfidence. Overconfidence can lead to frequent mistakes. Extroverts often speak quickly and confidently, which sometimes results in errors in grammar, pronunciation, or word choice. To address this, try slowing down your speech and focusing on accuracy over speed. Practice speaking with a language partner who can gently correct your mistakes. I did an episode 126, about speaking too fast and how you can slow down. So if this is a problem for you, you can go back to that episode and apply the tips that I share there. When it comes to accuracy, dedicate time to learning grammar, expanding your vocabulary, and other aspects of the language. You may need to sign up for a class or a course to brush up on your English. So while it's great to be confident, overconfidence can lead to skipping essential practice. Balance your confidence with learning and preparation to avoid careless mistakes. Which brings me to the second challenge that extroverts may face: impatience. So, impatience with the learning process can be an issue. If you're an extrovert, You might get frustrated with the slower pace of language acquisition and may not have the patience to focus on the finer details of grammar and syntax. So, syntax refers to the set of rules, principles, and processes that govern the structure of sentences in a language. So, if you have this challenge, you can overcome this feeling of not making progress by setting small, achievable goals and celebrating your progress. Remember that mastering a language is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So, in our courses and programs, many of our students are busy working adults, and a lot of them have children too. So, we understand how difficult it is to find time to learn and commit to learning over a period of time. So we encourage our students to go at their own pace. Even if it's learning just 1 hour a week, that can be considered progress and should be celebrated. We celebrate progress, not perfection, here at My English Matters, because your idea of what is perfect, maybe learning the way you did back in school or back in college. But let's be real. If you are working a full time job and you have a busy life at home, you will need to embrace the fact that you may never get to that perfect situation. So it's time to change how you see learning. As busy adults, learning may mean dedicating 30 minutes before you go to bed to read or listen to a training. Or it might be waking up early in the morning each weekend before the kids wake up to catch up on a lesson. Or it may just be listening to an educational podcast while you drive to work. So, whatever the small progress you make, when you achieve these little goals, celebrate that progress. When you do that, you'll feel encouraged to take more steps towards your goal and you'll see improvements over the long run. Now, another challenge among extroverts is the tendency to dominate conversations. So, some extroverts may not realize that they are dominating a conversation, but this can hinder active listening and learning from others, causing extroverts to miss out on new vocabulary and correct usage. So, make a conscious effort to listen more and engage others in conversation. Ask open ended questions and pay attention to their responses. When you're in a conversation and you find yourself speaking more than the other person, or you find that the other person is kind of not listening to you anymore, you've kind of lost their attention, ask them a question once you've finished your telling your story. Or you can even cut your story short and ask them for feedback. And listen actively to what they have to say instead of just waiting or thinking about what you want to say next. So, despite your outgoing nature, extroverts may also experience fear of making mistakes in public. So, like I mentioned in my previous episode, both introverts and extroverts can have this fear of making mistakes. This anxiety can impact our willingness to participate in conversations in English when it's our second language. So, remind yourself that making mistakes is a natural part of learning. Embrace them as opportunities to improve and grow. In fact, as your teacher, I want you to be making mistakes. Make as many mistakes as you can so that you can learn from them. That's why we have speaking practice sessions in our online programs like Communicate with Confidence and Members Monthly. These are opportunities for our students to make mistakes in a safe and non judgmental environment. Soon, you'll realize that making mistakes is not as bad as you thought it was, and you'll be making fewer mistakes because you've already learned from the many mistakes that you've already made. I hope that makes sense. Now, another challenge extroverts face is the tendency to ramble. This can make your speech less effective and harder for listeners to follow. So to combat this, we recommend using speaking frameworks. These frameworks provide a structure for your thoughts, helping you stay on topic and communicate more clearly. So in our course, Communicate with Confidence, we teach several speaking frameworks, and one of them is the PREP framework: point, reason, example, point, to help structure your thoughts. So when you have a lot to say, this framework can help you stay focused. P, state your point. R, give a reason to back up your point. E, provide an example or further explanation. And back to P, restate your point. Now, lastly, balancing formal and informal language can be tricky among extroverts. Extroverts may find it challenging to switch appropriately between formal and informal styles, as they might be more comfortable with casual conversational language. So, learn the differences between formal and informal language contexts. You can do this by doing a lot of reading. I find that reading fiction is one way that has helped me recognize the differences between formal and informal language. So, while there are other ways that you can learn to balance formal and informal language, for the sake of this podcast, let's just talk about the benefits of reading fiction. So, fiction often includes dialogue between characters in various settings, which provides context for when to use formal or informal language. For example, a character might use formal language in a professional setting and informal language when talking to friends. So, comparing the two can help you see the differences in structure, vocabulary, and tone. And fiction also spans a wide range of genres and styles, each with its own conventions. For example, a historical novel may use more formal language, while contemporary young adult fiction might use informal everyday speech. So make sure you practice using both formal and informal styles in appropriate settings to become more versatile in your communication. So now that we've gone through the challenges you may face as an extrovert and tips on how to overcome them, let's talk about how you can make the most out of your strengths as an extrovert to become more confident speaking in English. Number one, embrace every opportunity to speak. So extroverts gain energy from interaction. So dive into every chance to speak English. Join clubs, attend meetups, participate in group discussions, and don't shy away from conversations with native speakers. The more you practice, the more fluent and confident you'll become. Use your enthusiasm to your advantage. Now, your natural enthusiasm is contagious. Use it to motivate yourself and others. Start a study group or language exchange and lead the way. Your energy will inspire others to participate, creating a positive and supportive environment for everyone. And lastly, practice active listening. So while extroverts love to talk, they love to be in conversations, use that opportunity to practice active listening. Active listening is key to improving your language skills. Pay close attention during conversations to catch new vocabulary, correct usage, and pronunciation. This will make your own speech more accurate and effective. Now, here's a real life example to illustrate the points we've discussed in this episode. Imagine that you're attending an international conference. As an extrovert, you thrive in this environment. But beforehand, prepare by researching the topics to be discussed. Practice relevant vocabulary and phrases. At the event, engage actively, ask questions, and share your insights. Use feedback from these interactions to refine your skills further. So, from some final thoughts. Being an extrovert is a fantastic asset in learning and speaking English. Your social nature and enthusiasm can propel you to fluency. Embrace your strengths, practice actively, and turn every interaction into a learning opportunity. Confidence comes with time, persistence, and a positive attitude. So, thank you for joining me in this episode of the My English Matters podcast. I hope these tips help you harness your extroverted potential and speak English with greater confidence. If you're not yet an email subscriber, make sure you go to myenglishmatters.com to subscribe and get our 7 tips to speak with confidence via email. You'll also receive weekly tips and lessons to help improve your English, along with updates and offers exclusive to our email subscribers. See you in the next episode. Bye for now and Assalamu alaikum.